Hey party people, what is going on? I thought I'd hop on here and do a quasi long form video to answer a couple questions that I keep getting repetitively. And I think it'd be things that can really help a lot of you bands that are running your own sound, or kind of weekend warrior sound guys. I've even had a club in Ireland. A guy was asking me about trying to put together a small compact rig, for what he's trying to do in his venue. Volume is always at the center of this conversation. No matter who I'm having it with, whether it's a club owner, an installer, a band, a sound guy who works in small to medium-sized rooms, which, guys, let's face it, that's a lot of our industry is, working in those rooms. And there's money to be made there if you work efficiently and you work smart, and that sort of thing. But the other side of that is all this equipment is so crazy expensive these days that, you really got to be careful how you buy equipment. And I know that is what is motivating these questions, because people don't want to spend money twice. They want to spend money the first time and get it right. I've had some guys get mad at me because they had kind of listened to some 21-year-old guy salesman at a Guitar Center talk them into buying whatever gear that they're getting kickbacks on. We used to call those spiffs, inside retail. I worked pro audio retail at one of the biggest music stores on the East Coast for quite a while, right outside of Washington, D.C., Chuck Levin's Washington Music Center. And, I know how that game works. A lot of these salespeople are just selling you stuff that the manufacturer's representative is giving you a little bit of a kickback on, So instead of pushing something you really need, a lot of times they'll push gear that they're going to get a little bit of a extra commission on outside of what they're getting paid to do, on the clock with Guitar Center. So, those guys will sometimes who fall for that, and buy that kind of gear, they kind of get mad at me when they ask me to recommend gear, and when the gear that I recommend isn't what their salesperson told them to buy, then, it gets a little sticky, you know what I'm saying? So with all that being said, don't shoot the messenger, man. Don't get mad at me. I'm giving you my personal opinion on gear that I have myself used or, see a lot of, in that small to mid-sized venue market. I'm just trying to be super honest with you and tell you the things that I think work. If you bought super low end equipment and you can make that work for your clients and your clients are happy with that, hey man, more power to you. I'm not mad at you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not that guy who thinks that everything that I say is rule and there's no other way of doing things. No, I'm just offering my personal experience to this. So with that being said, we've had a lot of conversation over the last 2 weeks about X32, M32, XR18. We've even talked about some Soundcraft UI stuff inside of those videos or whatever. So let me just say, from a mixer standpoint, you really can't go wrong, and you're kind of just splitting hairs, or you're leaning towards something that has a better workflow that you're compatible with and just naturally, than to set and say that one of those, especially lower middle market stuff like the X Air, the Mackie DL series stuff, the stuff that's like $500 to $1,000 or something like that. You could even throw the X32 rack in there or whatever. All those mixers sound about the same. The QSC Touch Mix, all the Allen and Heath stuff like the QU stuff, or even the CQ is the new one I think that's out now. I just talked to a guy last night actually that was at my gig who is an AV installer and just got a CQ, and he is tickled pink with it, loves it. And I'm like, cool, dude, you do you, boo. I'm not mad at you, man. I am not trying to say that one of these mixers is radically better than the other. A lot of that lower middle market stuff all is kind of has their own little quirks and problems and things like that. And the more you own that stuff and the more you use it out, the more you learn those little quirks and you learn how to work around them. In my ecosystem, it's, X and M32, for the most part. I don't think, in fact, I just sold my fourth Soundcraft UI mixer. In fact, I deliver it tomorrow afternoon to a guy. I'm actually going to be in his neighborhood, working, so I'm going to be able to just drop it off to him. And I love the UIs. I mixed a show last night on a UI 24. No problem. No one's coming up to me saying, hey, man, your mix would sound so much better if you had an XR18, or if, a lot of you guys hit me up with the Midas version of that. What is that, the M-Air or whatever it is? I don't know. I don't work on them little mixers that awful much. I work on them enough to know my way around them and to know how to make them work and do what I need them to do to get through a gig every now and then, especially when I'm doing walk-in stuff in the wintertime, where I'm walking in on your system, which was what last night was. I'm walking in on their system, I'm mixing on their system. I'm basically just bringing an iPad to the table. So, as far as mixers go, I would highly recommend that you get either super familiar with Mixing Station, which offers its own little customizable app for all those different mixers, or you get used to the OEM app that comes with whatever mixer that you buy. I know guys that love those Mackie DLs. I don't like them because of the workflow. That's my only complaint about them. I've heard people mix shows on them and they sounded fine, the reality of this is no one really cares, except for the 3% that know the difference. And sometimes you need to be mixing for that 3% to get called back. I get all that. I understand all that. I know everybody's trying to put their best foot forward. I'm not mad at anybody. But as far as mixers go, that's really the honest to God truth about all that. It's always going to come down to your skill set more than the mixer. I always say this in all my videos, that it's about the Indian, not the arrow. So it's going to be more about your ability to hear frequency, understand the parameters of gain structure and compression, and know how to fly in effects in an intelligent manner to where they're not in the way and all that kind of stuff. That's going to mean more than which mixer you pick. Because one thing, if you go to the CLP Audio and Staging Facebook page and read the reviews, you will see multiple reviews in there that say something to the effect of, the nice thing about JR is no matter what mixer you put in front of him or what system he's on, he's always going to make that system sound the best it can possibly sound with the resources you give him. That just comes from experience, guys. I've been doing this for over 35 years. I work regularly on a broad range of mixers. I don't work on all of them. I don't work on, I rarely run into a Yamaha desk, the whole TF line. I've kind of left them out of the conversation because I don't have a bunch of experience on them. What I know about them and the times I've had to work on them, I didn't care for the workflow because it's different than what I'm used to. But if you force me into a venue, like if I took a house gig somewhere where that's all I had to mix on, I would make the best of that mixer. I would do my homework. I would do my due diligence. I'd watch all the tutors on YouTube, and I would know that mixer inside and out. That's what a good sound engineer does, So it's always going to come back to your skill set. But moving forward, because that's a whole nother conversation, we can continue to go down that rabbit hole for weeks, I'm asked a lot about what front of house boxes or monitor wedges and stuff people should buy, and I know powered plastic boxes are all the rage these days. I get that, guys. I know what's going on with that. I know where you're coming from, and that's all fine and good. I don't hate on that stuff because there's a convenience factor to it that has value. That's super valuable, I personally like the QSC K12 stuff, the KS118s, I think are great subs. The Turbo Sound IQ, I think that's really good stuff. I think they make, good stuff. The subs sound good. I think the subs are just as good as the QSC stuff. They might even be a few dollars cheaper because I know QSC is kind of the flavor of the week. And for you guys that haven't been in this business long enough to understand what that term means, flavor of the week, that means that, people have decided that, I remember when the K12 stuff come out, it was it just blew everybody out of the water. It was so light, it was just powerful enough to do a mid-sized venue or a small little patio gig outside, and on the backside of a brewery somewhere or something like that. And that's all, everybody just had to have K12, K12, K12. I remember hearing it everywhere. And my first impression of it was, it's okay. I mean, it's decent. It definitely works for small to medium-sized venues and small outdoor patio type things or whatever. Make a great acoustic rig, and that sort of thing. I've seen a few bands, like double stacking that stuff, or they would buy the KW, line, which is actually wooden boxes, but same drivers, same plate amplifiers, and not sound horrible. I mean, it was doable. No one's going to complain. When people came to me and asked me how it sounded, I'm like, it's okay. I mean, what do you care what I think? Like, what's your audience think? I mean, that's what's important. Just because I have an opinion of whatever, and I tend to be a passive guy. I use older passive stuff because it absolutely works. I had a conversation today at Camden Yards with a sound guy buddy of mine, about the front of house boxes I'm using. I'm still using my top boxes at that particular gig is SRX 715s, and then the subs are STX 828s, STX 828s. Probably the best passive sub JBL ever made in that middle market was that STX 828. They're super efficient. They're 139 dB SPL. You can throw 1,500 watts or 2,000 watts of box at them, and they'll give you that 139 all day long. To where the predecessor, which was the SRX 728, super huge popular sub. They made them for years and years and years, and is a great sub. It's 136, 137 dB, sub, and they're neo drivers, and neo drivers like power, which means you got to push a whole bunch more power to them. So when I was running 728s, I was pumping 4,400 watts of box into them, and getting the same performance that I'm getting out of my boxes right now. And I think I'm throwing, 2,000, 2,500 watts of box at them. So there's something to be said for that. But like I was telling my buddy today, I'm like, this JBL passive stuff keeps making me money. My tops are probably 20 years old. I mean, I refurbish them every couple of years. They look good, and that sort of thing. They sound great. I keep up with all the maintenance on the stuff. Same thing with the subs. The subs are probably a little newer. The STX line isn't quite that old. So, I mean, I'd say the STX line probably 10 or 12 years old or something like that. And they will pound your guts out of you all day long. I'm running Crown Macro I 5000s on that stuff. I mean, sure, I could put a 9,000 on it or something and throw more power at it, but I'm getting the peak performance out of the subs. What do I need to overdrive them for? I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous, when you think about it. And my sound guy buddy, we were both kind of chuckling about that. Like, yeah, here everybody is out trying to have the latest, greatest plastic, stickable line array rig. RCF is super huge right now with that stuff. Like the HDL 6s and HDL 10s, the HDL 20s are obviously really popular, but that's a little bit bigger with 2 10s in the box. That's not really a stickable rig. That's more of a hang rig. But you can stick that stuff, 2 of them on a stand, and get away with it. But man, I mean, I'm kind of old school, guys. I mean, I like the way my passive stuff sounds. I mean, this SRX stuff ain't the best sounding stuff in the world, but it's damn sure as good or better. I will confidently say better than most of the plastic boxes in that middle market. The QSC K12s, the IQ Turbos, any of the EV stuff that I see on the market right now. I mean, you got to step up into like legit, pro touring, type stuff to get anything that can throw as good as that, that's as efficient as good as that, and will last for 20 freaking years, I mean, somebody hit me up in the comments section about their K12s. Like, if you've had your K12s and you're doing at least 100 dates a year, okay, at least 100 shows a year with those K12s, how long have you had your K12s? Because I know a whole bunch of people that said K12s poop on them 5-6 years in. And they were guys that took care of the stuff, didn't overdrive the stuff, treated it right, and you kind of just get what you pay for, man. And I know those things aren't cheap, but at the same time, it's a plastic box, dude. I mean, now if you're talking pro touring level plastic boxes, okay, well, that's a whole different conversation. But that's not where we're at in the middle market. So the idea is to use the least amount of gear with the maximum amount of volume and fidelity, which is super, super huge. Fidelity is always super huge. Without having to break your back getting the stuff in and out of the club. Look, I'm not anti-plastic box. I would buy a plastic box rig if, I had need for it. But even some of the power stuff, like I just bought some Yamaha, DH something other coax 12 monitor wedges are powered, but they're wooden boxes. I just think they sound better than a K12 on the floor for a monitor. I think it's, God, I'm so horrible with these model numbers sometimes. I think it's DHM or something like that, 12P. It's the only coax monitor wedge that Yamaha makes. It's a 12 and a horn inside, the center of the woofer. So that's the coax thing. Those things are light. They're easy to get around. I don't know, like 1,000, 1,200 watts or whatever. I don't even pay attention to those numbers anymore because most of those manufacturers are lying about those numbers anyways. I mean, it's nuts, dude. It's absolutely nuts. Like my subs were rated. I remember when these STX subs came out, and they're rated for like, I don't know, 6,000 or 8,000 watts or some crazy stuff like that. And I'm like, if you pounded 8,000 watts at that freaking box for 5 minutes, it would be on fire. Okay, like I got real 8,000 watts. The thing's got 600 watt drivers in it. So you got 1,200 watts. RMS there, program. With a crossover or system processor. So 1,200 watts, I always try to double that for fidelity's sake to be able to get the dampening where I want it and that sort of thing, and to get the punch that I want. So I always have that kind of power on tap. So I'm running 2,500 watts a box into those things. Guys, it was a marketing thing. It's a marketing thing. So much of these numbers that they're shoving shoving into your pocket is just bull butter, man. It's not right. I've seen some of these plastic boxes be rated for 1,600 watts, and they got like a 1-inch horn in it. And I'm like, my 715 passive tops have 3-inch horns in them. They have 3-inch diaphragms, 1-inch exit. It might be 1.5-inch exit now that I think about it. That is going to always blow away a plastic box with a 2-inch diaphragm, 1-inch exit. There's just not enough material there to give you what you're really trying to get. Now, if you're in a small room, well, then you don't need as much sound pressure. So, here comes the fidelity thing. It's the whole Fletcher-Munson, principle. When you don't have to run your rig on 11 all the time, then you get a lot more fidelity, and the mids and the highs respond differently. The low end responds differently. So I always run my rigs right in cruise control, right in that comfort zone, so that I have maximum amount of fidelity with maximum amount of sound pressure and muscle. That's not cheap, guys, and a lot of you guys are hitting me up in the comments section, and I love that. I love interacting with you guys. I love talking to you guys, but you're asking for things, you don't know what you're asking for. Let me put it that way. You're asking for things that are unobtainable at your budget level. So I made this video to say, I said all this crazy stuff, this whole rabbit hole we went down, to say this. Adjust your expectations and understand the expectations of your environment. The expectations of a 4-piece dad band playing at O'Malley's Irish Pub down on the corner is radically different than a top 40 dance band playing a 1,000-seat ballroom, in downtown DC or Baltimore. Like, you're getting a lot more muscle and a lot more gear to do that big room, especially with a dance band. It's very bottom heavy, or if you're providing audio for an EDM show, even if it's a small EDM show for 800 or 1,200 people or something, it's a lot of bottom end needs to happen in those shows. Dude, that's not where you're at in small to mid-sized rooms. I think some of you guys are so gear junkie driven, and look, I get that, all right? I'm a gear junkie too. You get so gear junkie driven that you don't realize that what you actually need for what your program requires, what your show requires, is far less than what you're shooting for. Now look, I'm the guy that always shoots 35 to 40% over what I actually need. That way my systems can run in cruise control, and you have the fidelity in place and all that kind of stuff. But you don't need some big honking rig or 6 tops and 8 bottoms and all this other crazy stuff to make your gig work. Buy whatever powered rig. If you're into Mackie and you like that Thump series stuff or whatever their latest series is or whatever, and that's all you can afford, and you can take that rig into O'Malley's, down on the corner and make money with it, hey man, more power to you. I'm happy for you. I really am. You don't have to be acting like you're, mixing the Foo Fighters all the time, Come on, dude. We're all just trying to have fun, and you're really, the guys on that level are really just trying to make a quick buck, and it's hard to make a quick buck because all that stuff, even if you're just, let's just say you do a rollout QSC rig, okay? Let me just say this and we'll end with this because the video is going long. Say you bought a pair of K12 tops, KS118 bottoms, that's a nice front of house rig, and then you bought 4 or 5, K10s for wedges, because you're going to run into, I'm still probably 40% of my bands, 35%, 30% of my bands, somewhere in that ballpark, are still in wedges. Today the band I was working with were wedges and ears. It don't happen very often, but it happens. So you're going to have wedges of some kind. Well, you're talking about, what? 1, 2, 3, 4. Another 4 is 8. You're probably around $9,000 just with those speakers alone, not counting maybe 10, not counting cables, cable trunks to haul the cables in, AC cables, which is all your extension cords, electrical cords and stuff. All that needs to be 12 gauge, that sort of thing. I carry in my in my A and B rig, I'm carrying 3 or 4 100-foot 12 gauge extension cords, probably 8 25-foot, probably another 6 or 8 10-foot, and then probably 8 or 10 power strips, and then a trunk to haul it all in. You're talking probably $1,500, $2,000 in cables right there. Something like that. So it's expensive, guys. That's, even when you're trying to do it on a small to mid-size level, it's still expensive. That don't count mics. That don't count all your XLR cables. Right now I'm trying to button up a 3rd system to be able to send out next year. And right now in my eBay cart, I think I have just cabling, and I think I have 6 Sennheiser E604s in the cart as well. That's the only mics in the cart. Everything else is just cables, mic cables, speaker cables, and AC extension cords. And I think it's like $2,400 to outfit my C-Rig. That's just cables. Like I said, that doesn't count an XLR box it takes to carry all the XLRs. That does not count direct boxes. That doesn't count. I have a 3rd JBL rig that's up and ready to go, there. That doesn't count whatever the mixer's going to be. The amp rack to run that. If you run powered, okay, now you don't need an amp rack. That's all fine and good. You still need cables to hook all that stuff together. So now you need twice as many XLRs. And you need good XLRs, not this, buy 10 for $1 on eBay, You need name brand Proco, stuff with Nutrix ends on them, decent XLR cables to connect all that stuff together. And then you need something to haul it in. Whether it's a cargo van, a full-size cargo van, or a little enclosed trailer. If you buy an enclosed trailer, you need a truck or something to pull it with. So, all that stuff adds up. You need some form of liability insurance. My liability insurance is just coming due in September. And I don't even know what I'm paying now. I don't know. I'm like around $2,000 or something, for about $3 or $4 million worth of liability insurance. My liability insurance is much more in depth than what you would need. But, the average guy could probably get, $1 million of liability insurance, which is all you would need for that, for probably $300 or $400 a year. So all that's got to factor in your gas, your vehicle maintenance, to do stuff. Like I tell people all the time, if you want to do pro audio, don't start a production company. Just don't. If you can nickel and dime your way through this stuff over 4 or 5 years, and then once you get a system together, then go out and start gigging, okay, that's all fine and good. I know a lot of guys have done that. There's been times in my life that I've done that. I've been divorced 3 times, so believe me, I've had to start over before. I know what it's like. My second divorce cost me everything. and really started at zero all over again, and beat my way back up the ladder. So yeah, I tell guys, don't start a production company. Go take a house gig somewhere. Mix on somebody else's gear. Take a gig with a band or something that a corporate band or something like that that's looking for a $100 a night sound guy, or something like that, and let them do all the investing, and then you get to go in there. Or a church. Churches are always looking for sound guys. That's a good way to kind of scratch your pro audio itch without having to put a second mortgage on your house. And I know guys who have done that. I know guys who have absolutely done that, So it is what it is, man. That's the wonderful world of pro audio, and that's the wonderful world of trying to do stuff simple. I know so many guys that's got in this business saying, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm not going to do much. I'm not going to buy any more gear and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other. And I'm going to work for these couple bands that I'm working for, especially guys that are older, approaching retirement years and stuff. They're like, this is it. I'm not doing it anymore. And 100% of the time, they're going to run into a gig or into a band that needs something they don't have, and they're on the phone with Sweetwater and they're buying gear. Or they're on the phone with whoever it is they buy gear from, and they're buying gear. Just kind of is what it is, dude. It's the way it goes. And I have seen guys dig themselves into big, big holes, trying to just be a little ankle biter guy in the pro audio business because it was their hobby. It's what they wanted to do. I always tell guys, go volunteer at your local church and take all that money you was going to spend in a production rig and go buy a Harley or a hot rod or a boat, or, take lavish camping trips with your family, or plan super cool vacations with your family, and you'll get way more fun and way more out of life doing that than what you will out here beating the streets, arguing with venue owners and bands over budgets. None of them understand what it takes to do what we do. None of them understand the high cost of doing what we do. I'm sitting on right now over $1 million worth of inventory. And I run into gigs all the time where I still got to go out and buy, stuff like I said here a few minutes ago. We're getting ready to put that C rig together, and I need to blow another, probably $5,000 to make that rig, mobile and ready to go, not counting whatever it's going to take to try and put it in a truck and send it to a gig. And then I got to find work that pays enough to be able to afford to rent a truck to put it in to get to the gig, and to afford to pay one of my guys to actually go mix the show and still turn a profit, because I don't do this as a hobby. This is all I do in my life. I do 180 shows a year, and this is what we do for a living, and it's a lot. It really, really is. So if you're looking for, to put together a simple, easy to set up, easy to maintain rig, pick your poison with whatever middle market mixer you want. X-Air, X32 rack is super popular right now because you can get one for $900. That'll give you 16 channels. You can fit most rock bands into 16 channels. Hook a router to that thing and you're off to the races that way. And then buy whatever plastic box, single 18 front of house rig you want to buy, and whatever monitors you want to buy. Get all the cabling and put it together and go at it. What most guys find out is after they spend all that money, then they kind of just feel obligated, like I got to make this work, otherwise my wife's going to be up my rear end, or I'm going to have to face the reality of failing at this. Again, let me just give you some really, really good advice. Volunteer at your church. Go, if you have enough experience where you can actually get a gig at a club mixing somewhere, go do that. Don't get into the production business unless you got deep pockets. Like I know some guys, some of my ankle biter competitors, they've been $300-400 a night guys. Some of them have big time, government jobs. We live in the middle market here, or the mid-Atlantic. So we have, Philly, DC, Baltimore, Richmond, Virginia. Northern Virginia is the richest. Loudoun County is the richest county in the mid-Atlantic. It's the East Coast, Silicon Valley. So, there's a lot of IT, a lot of cybersecurity, and a whole lot of government work going on here. We're surrounded by military bases everywhere. So I do know a lot of guys that have high-paying day gigs, and this is just their hobby. It's what they do on the weekends. It's what they enjoy doing. Again, I'm not hating on you, But I'll just, leave you with this. What is your quality of life? I mean, are you really genuinely happy out here, unloading gear in 100-degree days and, getting rained on and gear getting broke because you got rained on and no one cares that you got rained on and you just, all your powered stuff just took a dump on you. Now you may have to replace some stuff. Or would you rather be out taking a nice vacation with your family and enjoying it? Look, some of us are cursed with the desire to do this, and our hard-headed asses are going to do it no matter what. But I try to tell young guys specifically all the time, man, if you're in college for this, make sure that you're minoring in some kind of like cybersecurity thing or something else. Have a plan B. Because I know a ton of guys that have went to school for this and ended up working at Amazon or any number of other places just to try to make a living, because it's a very, very competitive market. And if you're not established and you don't have a good reputation, it's really, really hard to break in. So, love you guys. See you on Wednesday for the Grumpy Sound Guy Show.